Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today's audio and video guest was the 2019 overall winner at NPC Nationals. She is recently qualified for the 2024 Olympia, and she was the 7th place competitor at the 2023 Olympia, which is a huge deal, 7th in the world. And she qualified for that show at her 3rd show of the season and after 3 years away from the stage. So we're going to hear a lot about that journey. She has her BS in nutrition and foods and sometimes offers online coaching too. So welcome to the show, Ariana Brothers. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm good. As you know, it's been a pleasure just kind of catching up, touching base. I feel like you're just so sweet, so genuine, and I'm excited to have you on. I've been looking forward to this a lot. You've had a very inspiring journey and one that I think we can learn a lot from, especially those of us who are taking more time off. So before we get into all of that, is there anything you do or think about, or maybe a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage?
Honestly, I just calm myself as much as I can and just like mentally talk to myself and just say, solidify myself in everything that I know I can do well. And then just kind of just do it really. Like, I don't even give myself a chance to think about much. So
do you ever notice your like physical body is sometimes like your mind can be chilling? Maybe this doesn't happen to you, but like sometimes my mind is chilling, but my physical body is like shaking. Yes. And that moment before stage to just calm and chill out like helps to get centered. And I would never know that you even have to calm yourself before you step on stage, because when you're on stage, you're so poised and confident. It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like we all, as competitors, before we get on stage, I feel like we all experience that nervousness in a way. Whatever form it comes out in is different for everybody, but I feel like we all experience it, even if it is just slightly mental too. So I honestly, it's good to kind of have and think yourself through those emotions before you even step on stage, because I feel like you can prepare yourself a little bit better. So that always helps me personally. And if not, obviously taking deep breaths, kind of calming your heart rate a little bit too. I feel like that always helps. So
definitely. And have you always been very confident on stage, or did that take a lot of time?
I feel like at first I was confident, but I don't think that I feel like my posing and maybe my energy has just gotten better. So at first I was very confident, but I look back and I'm like, oh, cringy. Like, good job for being confident. But at the same time, like, there's a lot of things we could have worked on back then. But no, I think honestly, the more confident, even if you don't look your best, but the more confident that you are, I feel like people will believe that. And they see that and they're like, oh, at least she was confident about it. So I think that's one of the most important things.
So true. I think that if you carry yourself on stage a certain way, that energy is felt. You can be the best physique and you carry yourself differently than maybe normal if they're used to seeing you, or maybe you carry yourself in a way that doesn't exude confidence. It's going to change the perception of your physique. Just like someone who walks into the room, it's not always about what they're wearing or what they look like. It's like an energy that they carry that makes you go, wow. And so I think the same thing applies on stage. If you put the physique aside, you've done the work. Now, how do you want to feel, like you said, tap into that when you're on stage?
Yep, exactly. And I think that's, especially with competing, I feel like one of the things that we can all work on too, because we work so hard, to get to this point that, letting anything kind of alter that appearance on stage, I feel like can be crushing if you feel like, you go up there and you're just like, oh, I could have been more confident, or I could have walked this way, or whatever it is. But I feel like just preparing yourself for that, that will help 100%. Even if you're not fully ready. I mean, it happens, a lot, but at the same time, like, just prepare yourself. That's just my biggest thing.
Have you stepped on stage not feeling ready physique wise and then were able to shift mentally to still feel or present confidence?
Yes, 100%. So, I mean, I think it was my pro debut that I did in 2020. That was the last show that I did after I turned pro, but I just did not feel like I looked my best. I was just kind of like, yikes, like I know I could be better. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? I worked hard to be here. I'm just going to present myself and I'm just going to do it, because you never know, especially with bikini too. You just never know what can happen. It can alter show to show. So I'm like, I'm just going to go out here, give myself good energy, which maybe it wasn't the best energy, but it still was, I feel like, better than how I felt inside. So that I think definitely helped me. But even for my very first show this year, when I first started at Republic of Texas, I felt like I could have been better. And obviously it was my first show coming back after 3 years. So again, like, I didn't really know what to expect. Things had changed a little bit, maybe a little bit of posing shifts too. So I just needed to make sure that I, came looking my best. Obviously, as I competed more and more, I realized, wow, I looked better as I continued prep compared to that first show this year. But I was like, wow, okay, like I still managed to still step on stage and be very confident. So I don't know, just, being your biggest fan and biggest support, I feel like always helps when you're doing this by yourself. So
I like how you said that you progressed from each show, but you still had the confidence. And you mentioned that a lot of that's also knowing and conceptualizing the fact that bikini could be anybody's game really that day. And I think keeping that mindset actually relieves a lot of that pressure. But I'm curious if at the pro debut experience, was there extra pressure because it was your pro debut, or was it really just, yeah, I could have looked better?
yeah, a little in a way, but it's only because I put that on myself. Nobody else put that pressure on me. I feel like at the end of the day, we put that pressure on ourselves. So I had just won the overall at Nationals, my second show ever, right? So like, that's a big deal for your second show ever. So I think, maybe people were expecting more, but I didn't ask and I wasn't going to if anybody did. But I know that I set myself up for a high expectation going into my pro debut because of what I had done. So I was like, well, I need to make sure I come in my best, right? So even though I didn't, it's okay, because I feel like I've redeemed myself a little bit more for myself personally. But yes, I do feel like there was a little bit of expectation that I did set on myself though. So nobody else really did that for me, but I feel like we're always our like worst critic anyway. So, it's hard sometimes.
Totally. Like we can have compassion after the fact, knowing we did what we did. We put everything we could into the prep, but hey, we looked this way and that was the outcome, is fine. But you then took a lot of time off, you improved. Let's fast forward and then we'll kind of trace this journey backwards. You just placed 7th in the world, and then you went on and you got your next qualification for the Olympia. So your second qualification for the Olympia, you're going to compete in 2024. You just said though that you looked better as the season progressed. So do we have multiple shows lined up before the Olympia, or are you just gunning for it?
Honestly, so I think we're planning on for next year doing a couple of the bigger shows. We don't have anything set yet, but we do want to get in front of as many people as we can, just to kind of get some good feedback going into the Olympia. So obviously that's the biggest show of the year. So we just want to make sure that we're still bringing something that they're wanting. And if we do need to make adjustments, that we still have enough time to make that. So that way we are prepared going into next year's Olympia. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's different than your most recent season. It was, okay, get the feedback, improve,
Yes.
and qualify. This time it was crushed it at the Olympia, qualified. Now you get to get the feedback to apply for the biggest stage in the world.
Yeah. And I commend, the Olympians that just go into it especially obviously all the winners in every division. Cause I'm like, oh, me personally, it's hard to make sure you have it all by that time. Like for me personally, I'm just like, I need to make sure I have all the critiques beforehand because I don't know if I trust myself to be ready.
Yeah.
So I give kudos to everybody that just goes straight into it because that's hard, especially when they come in looking phenomenal. Obviously with Jennifer Dory, that was her first show. I'm like, that's awesome. Like that's very hard to do, but she nailed it. So
Yeah, that was super impressive. I think a lot of people were excited to see that she was an example of someone who could take the feedback from one show and then bring it exactly as she needed to. And I think that it's also great because there's a lot of athletes who do compete multiple times before the Olympia, as you're saying you'd like to do for yourself to get that feedback and make sure you're dialing it in. We saw Amy do that last year a lot too. So I'm excited to see what experiences you have this year and how that influences your next Olympia. But what was it like to actually be on the biggest stage in the world and have that type of progression going into that?
it felt in a way like, I know everybody says this, but it really feels like you're dreaming in a way. Like this isn't really happening, right? So like I'm so used to seeing everybody on social media, and the fact that I was there with the best of the best, it was like an indescribable feeling. It was kind of just like, are you sure? Like, am I supposed to be like, I'm confused. Hold on. Like it just did not feel like it was real, but in a way, like it felt very like calm. It felt very like everybody was just very sweet. Everybody was welcoming. I didn't feel out of place. Like I felt like I belonged there, and to me that meant a lot to me. And just I don't know, it was just a very good environment, especially backstage for finals. Even during prejudging, I just kind of soaked it all in, but it was just an indescribable feeling. Like I felt so grateful. I felt so honored. I felt just very proud of myself at that moment, just to know that like, wow, I thought about these things in the beginning of the year before I even started prep. And then here we are. Like I remember talking about it with my husband and being like, yeah, that's what I want to make happen. And the fact that we're here, it's just like all these emotions and all these like feelings just come to you. And you're just like, wait, really? Like, I can't believe it.
I just got chills because
Yeah.
I can feel your excitement, your energy, and that coming to fruition. Like this dream is real, it's in your hands, you're experiencing it, and you felt like you belonged. Almost like sometimes I think it's like we've been there so many times in our mind that when
Yeah.
we get there, it's like, yeah, this is familiar in some
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what you kind of like manifest or you picture for yourself, or even if you don't know what it looks like, you have an image in your head of what you think it may look like or what it may feel like. And I'm like, okay, like this feels awesome. Like this is kind of what I've hoped and dreamed for and manifested in my head. And like we're actually experiencing this in real life. Like what a crazy feeling that is. So
That's super cool. You mentioned earlier that a big part of this is being your biggest supporters, being your own biggest supporter, your biggest fan, making sure you really believe in yourself. And you said that this is something that you and your husband talked about in detail, like dreaming about it. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? And you worked for it too. So how do you think, or maybe what do you think is the correlation between self-belief and actually seeing things come to life?
I think honestly, the more confidence and the more belief that you have in yourself, it gives you the ability to accomplish anything that you choose to do and you actually try for. So the biggest part I feel like that we as humans get stuck on is we don't have that confidence in everything that we do. And I think that can hold us back sometimes. So here I am in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I know what I'm capable of based off of my history that I've done at nationals. And so I'm like, I know I can make this happen. I know what I've heard from judges. I know what I've heard from other coaches who have, told me certain things, and, maybe they're just trying to give me, I don't know, but I'm at the same time, I'm like, hey, like maybe there is something. So I'm like, I just fully want to always try my best and always do everything that I can to make sure that I present myself 100%. So whether I am consistently posing or whether I'm consistently making sure I'm eating my meals, going to the gym, whatever, I want to make sure I'm doing all those things perfectly. So that way I feel confident about myself. And then in turn, people will see that and be like, okay, yes, because here's the thing. If we mess up one time, nobody will know, right? But we get so down on ourselves because mentally we know, okay, I screwed up or whatever it is. I didn't do my workout. I didn't get my last meal in, whatever it is. And it takes a shift on our mental, and we feel it. So I've had that happen to me. And I think just making sure you are sticking to everything, I think that will help you progress and be able to reach those dreams that you want to, and those goals that you've set for yourself.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes is from Jordan Peterson, and he says that if you execute on everything you need to do today, then you don't have to worry about the future. Something along those lines. That is the gist of it. And I really appreciate that, especially from a bodybuilding standpoint, because it's an everyday thing, or building a business or running a family is an everyday thing. And if you are constantly worried and anxious about what's going to happen, am I going to go pro? Am I going to do that? It's like taking away from the experience, I think, in some ways, versus, like you said, I believe in myself. I have a great track record. I've proven that I can be successful. One mistake or one bad showing isn't defining me as an athlete. It's actually, well, maybe in some ways it's defining you, because it's defining who you're becoming and it's allowing you to be better and improve, but it's not a defining moment. It's not putting a stamp on you saying, yeah, I'm a failure, I'm a mistake, I messed up, I'm not going to succeed. Instead, it's like, okay, how do I learn from this and apply it? And I think that's your champion mindset that you have, is like, I'm going to be compassionate with myself and analytical about what needs to improve, rather than getting stuck in criticism that doesn't actually serve the purpose.
Right, exactly. And obviously, even your champions, there's always something to work on, right? Like, we're never perfect. We can never be perfect. So in my head, I'm just like, even if I were to win, like I won my last show, I'm just like, I'm over here thinking about, okay, what am I going to do to get better? Right. So, because if we stay in this mindset of complacency, we're never going to be our best self. So we may think, oh, this is the best that I've brought. Yes, in this moment, this is the best I've brought. But guess what? There's still the future that's going to happen for next year that I want to make sure I'm better than this right now. So I feel like just constantly putting in your head, like, I'm going to be better. I can be better. I've allowed myself to get better to this point. So let's just keep this going. I feel like you're always going to evolve and you're always just going to be your best self. So that's just a good mindset, I feel like, to always have.
If you've ever struggled in your prep or your improvement season or any transition phase in this sport, you know how valuable it is to have that direct guidance and support, but it's so difficult to find, which is exactly why I created the on-demand mindset coaching platform for competitors. That is only $9.99 per month. How it works is you log into the system and you select what season you're in, and then you're prompted to select a struggle you're facing, and then even more specific struggles branching off of that. And at your fingertips, you will be given direct guidance and support with a PDF resource as well as video trainings. And you have tons of access to years of group coaching calls that you're more than welcome to replay and watch, and you get access to a live group coaching call every single month. So you're not only getting support at your fingertips, but you're also getting an incredible community there to support you along your journey. If this is something you're interested in learning more about and exploring, you can sign up at www.celestial.fit/on-demand and get access to this right away. There are no other join fees or cancel fees, so you can come and go as you please, and you are always welcome to be in the Build More Than Just a Body community.
When you think about like how you need to progress and be better, and you know that that involves like improving in some way on stage, of course, but what does that look like off the stage? What are those routines, those habits, those things that you've done consistently that you actually feel have led to these improvements in that mindset?
I feel like, honestly, for me, I'm kind of like a a list person. Let's like check things off our list. So like me personally, I'm like, let me make sure I write down my routine every single day of what I'm going to do. So whether that's going to be posing, let me make my meals, let me make sure I eat by this time, whatever this is, and whatever that looks like. I like to prepare myself that way because I notice that the more consistent that I am with making sure my workouts are done during these times, my posing, I can constantly perfect that. That allows me to be able to be better and to learn, because I don't know if you've had this moment. I'm sure we all have, but it'll be something that you can't get. Like, as let's say with posing, it'll be like a way that you hit it that you're just like, I'm just having trouble hitting it this way. And then all of a sudden you do it one day and it just clicks and you're just like, wow, I'm like, it was that simple. And like, now I know how to do it. Something just shifts all of a sudden. So it's like the more that we continue to do it, I feel like the more we learn about ourselves. And again, it's easier to continue to get better.
Were you an athlete at all growing up?
So I was, but I couldn't do a lot of sports because my mom was a single mom. She couldn't really afford it. So I did cheerleading and I did soccer when she was able to help me pay for like the uniform and all this stuff. So I didn't grow up into sports, but I played them in like middle school and a little bit in high school. So yeah, I'd say a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, like you have that, I asked that because you have that like that driven type of mentality I usually hear from past athletes who were taught, like, you keep showing up, you perfect the reps, you like in volleyball, it's like, okay, you're setting a certain way. Now you're going to go against the wall and do it 100 more times at least, but then you're going to repeat that. And so I think it kind of gets drilled in. That's why I was curious. And you said that your mom was a single mom. So I'm going to just quickly touch on that too. Did that influence your outlook on yourself or womanhood or life in general?
Oh, 100%. Like, I saw my mom pretty much do it all and she never complained about it. She just kind of got it done. And so she always instilled in me, if you ever want something in life, like, you can make it happen. You just have to do it. Like, the world is yours. Like, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be this, if you want to be that, you can do it. I will help you as much as I can, like within the means that we have, but just know that determination and hard work sometimes is all that you need in order to get where you want. So for me, even just like as a little girl, like, I just remember my mom like saying those things to me, and I just feel like it's just kind of shaped me into who I am now. And I've just always seen my mom persevere through everything and anything that we've ever, dealt with. So I just feel like I'm like, it's me too. Like, thank you for doing that, because it truly means a lot. And I think sometimes we don't realize why our parents are the way they are, or why they say these things to us when we're little, but we get older and we're just like, so this is why you wanted to instill this, like, so this makes sense. So I appreciate the fact that, she was a little bit harder on me growing up, but it was for great reason. Like, she just didn't want me to not set goals for myself or not be driven. And she didn't want to see me be lazy or not have anything to work for. She wanted me to be independent, self-sufficient, and I appreciate her for that. So
so it's your mama. She had a big influence on you. That's so awesome. Is she still here? Is she still alive?
Yes, she is. She's with me and we're very close, and she's just like my best friend, even though growing up, the whole parent thing, like, I'm not your best friend, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother, or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, no, she's awesome. I'm just super close with her. So I just appreciate her for everything.
That's so beautiful. She sounds like such an amazing woman who you have a lot of her qualities and traits. And I'm sure witnessing her pursue what she needed to pursue and persevere and execute on her daily tasks, like, she was able to be successful and model that for you. And then you find that it works. And I love how you said, you don't always know why your parents are telling you or saying certain things until you're older. And that crosses my mind so often. I'm like, oh, that's why we had to, it was like, you never quit. You have to finish it. If you start something, you finish it. Even if you don't like it anymore, if you finish it anyways, then you move on. You learn, that's fine. But you have to finish. And so many other lessons we could go into. But the point is, you do absorb it, you hear it, you feel it, and you experience it. Or maybe some people have a negative example and then they're like, I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah.
But I think it's amazing. You had such a positive example, and your mom is now, not she's your mom, not your bestie, but she's more like your bestie now,
Yes. Yes.
which is so cool. Does she come to your shows?
So she actually came to the Olympia this year, and she doesn't know a lot about bodybuilding and shows, so she's still learning, but she does live stream them. So
Oh, that's
she may
so
travel, but she's kind of understanding it more. I try and break it down because, it is a lot. Like, I didn't grow up in bodybuilding or working out or anything like that. So I kind of just like found it on my own. So I'm trying to expose it to her as much as I can and kind of like teach her these things. Cause I'm like, I know there's a lot with it, but she's learning, she's doing much better about it. I think being at the Olympia and seeing all the divisions and seeing like all these great people on stage, she was just kind of like, wow. Like, I think sometimes she thinks they're more like, oh, who's the prettiest? And I'm like, Mom, no, like this isn't what this is about.
everybody's gorgeous, so that's a hard competition.
Exactly. And I'm like, Mom, no, it's their physiques. Like, so I'm trying to teach her the words about like conditioning or being lean and all this stuff. So I forget, when you're not in it, sometimes it can be a lot or overwhelming as far as like what things mean. So she is very supportive of it all. If I can't eat certain things, I'm like, Mom, no, I can't have blueberries right now. I can only have my green beans. Okay. So yeah, exactly. Right. You're like, oh, I'm like, no, it's fine. But she's very supportive, with everything that I'm doing. And that's all I can ask for. So
That's so awesome. I think she sounds amazing. And I love how you detailed the experience of a parent too, who's, I think it's funny when you see a parent and their kids getting into bodybuilding, they're thinking all the things, right?
yes.
And I remember my mom was so supportive too. She used to do pageants and modeling and things of that. Well, yeah, she was big into that. And I remember when I was first practicing posing, she like stood with me in the hallway. She's like, you need to carry your shoulders back. And I'm like, she probably knows better than me. This is my first show, but she probably knows better than me anyway. And
Right.
invest. And if someone was like, oh, like you don't mind your daughter being up in a bikini, she's like, you're missing the whole point. Like she would always have my back. I think it's because our moms, like, if we explain it, they're gonna be like, okay,
yes,
exactly what's going on.
Yep. Oh yeah, 100%. Your biggest support. Like, I know what to tell my daughter, like, yeah, I love it though. I'm like, I wouldn't ask for it any other way.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you have so much support from your husband too. So let's talk about him. Let's shine some light on him as well. So he has been a big part of this journey. You said that he believed in you. You guys talked about this a lot too. Does he share this lifestyle and a lot of the daily habits with you?
Yes, actually. So we both started prepping in 2019. So we kind of started this journey together. We both were like involved in working out and just kind of like, altering our physiques to the way that we wanted. And he was like, have you ever thought about competing? And I'm like, yeah, I've thought about it. Cause that's when I feel like we started to see it more on social media. It was starting to break out more. So I was like, yeah, I definitely have thought about it. Have you? And he's like, yeah, I think we should do it together. So I'm like, okay. So we started and he did his show first. And then I did my show later in the year. And after seeing him and seeing like, as far as the meals, what he had to eat, because we were all still very new to this. We didn't know a lot. And, the training and the cardio and seeing kind of our minds get stronger because we were younger then. Like we had just gotten married that year and he was
first year of marriage, right into prep.
About that sometimes and I'm like, okay, now I understand maybe like why we were probably irritable with each other and like we had just gotten married and like we're prepping for the first year. I'm like, that's hard. Wow. But we made it through. So so we were young. I think he was like 22. I was like 23 or something like that. So we were still kind of learning, each other and learning being in something that actually takes a mental strain too on you and learning how to navigate through it. Because again, we were both new to it. Nobody in our family or friends did it. So he's honestly like, I commend him because he did it first and seeing what he went through. And obviously for men and for bodybuilding, it's a lot harder to get to that leanness. So he gave me the strength to be able to be like, okay, I can do this too. And we kind of knew at that point how to prepare ourselves mentally for it. And I think he knew when I was going to start competing too, okay, I understand she's probably going to go through these emotions, or I think, you know, she's going to be irritable or hungry or whatever it is. And a lot of the time it takes away from your schedule that you have with each other, right? So if you're both working, but you still have to go and get your cardio in, well, by the time I get home, you know, I have to go to bed, and then we wake up the next day and work time. And so the fact that he's been very understanding and always was from the beginning, that plays a big part, because I know not every spouse may always understand it, especially if they're not in it. And you know, some people choose not to have a spouse that's in it because it gives them a little bit of a different perspective, or maybe they just don't want to be surrounded by it 24/7. And that's totally cool too, you know? So I understand, but I appreciate the fact that he does it with me too. And even now he's in his off season and it's still consistent meals, and you still got to train, you still got to do it. So it's like, it's literally just our lives 24/7, but I enjoy it. I love it because he does it just as well as I feel like anybody else, and me, even when I'm prepping, like it makes sense for us. So I'm very grateful to have him.
That's so awesome. It sounds like he's understanding. So these are some of the keys I've taken away. A spouse or a partner who's understanding is important. A spouse or a partner who also competes, it can be really great, although it can cause some irritabilities, but you learn and you navigate that. But overall, someone who understands is key, and helping them to understand. And even if it's your own separate thing, making sure they know the lifestyle. So what are some of the ways that your husband shows up for you, or vice versa, even, that you think would be helpful to other couples who maybe both compete, or it could be that one only competes, but what do you think are some of those important things that you do to show up for each other through that prep or through improvement season?
I think sometimes it's just learning more about kind of what your person needs or wants at that time. So for example, if I am feeling very low energy from higher cardio days or whatever it is, and sometimes I don't have the energy to just like talk a lot, you know, and just, I kind of want to be to myself. I think sometimes he can pick up on that, and he'll be like, so do you want some time to yourself right now? Because I can tell that obviously your energy is low. And for me, I'm like, yes, like, I honestly, it's not you. I really just want to just not talk or do anything, or I just want to watch videos or something. And so just asking before getting upset and being like, am I doing something wrong? You know, asking where your person's at first before jumping to that conclusion, because I think a lot of times it can trigger something different, a different outcome. And meanwhile, it had nothing to do with, you know, that person. It's just what that other person is experiencing in that moment. So I think just understanding and asking these questions just to validate, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Let me make sure I give you that space, or I give you what you need. Or is there anything that I can do to help you? That's another good one. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, yes, please, can you just like help me make chicken really quick? Like something like that. Just asking those questions, I feel like it really helps, and it shows that you're there for them, even if you don't fully understand what they're going through at that moment. That's how he's helped me a lot. And I always love the question. I'm just like, what can I do to help you? And I'm like, okay, my heart, never mind. I don't feel bad anymore.
You're over there like doing the dishes, moving your potatoes on the scale. So he's like, okay, we're just good.
Yes. Yeah.
I totally get it. It is really a relief. So you don't even have to say, yes, I need help. Just having someone ask you,
Yeah.
is there something I can do to help? It is a sense of relief because you feel that they're there for you. And I love your point about not assuming, instead asking what's going on, or understanding the person, instead of like, oh, you're mad at me, or oh, you're ignoring me. It's like, okay, maybe they're resetting. And it actually reminded me of that one meme that's like, when your wife goes to bed but sends you 200 reels, like, and it's on Amazon, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, that's
you're not wrong. Yep.
she's like, I just don't, you just need space sometimes to rest, to just be like, to mindlessly be, and to have a partner who can proactively recognize your needs, but also not be afraid to ask you what your needs are
Yeah.
is a big deal. And I think that is a selfless kind of love too, instead of making things about them. So like if you sigh, you're tired, but if they're like, oh, what did I do? You
Yeah.
know, that would be, it would cause more mental strain than necessary. So I think it's a really amazing insight you provided, those questions, you know, for
Yeah.
couples to ask or consider for better communication.
Mhm.
It sounds like he lives the prep life. He lives the improvement season life. He's super supportive and invested in your journey too, which is amazing. So how do you guys balance, if at all, how do you balance other aspects of your relationship when it does seem heavily invested in this?
Honestly, we just kind of incorporate everything as much as we can within what we do. So for the most part, we're pretty much on like the same mindset when it comes to, oh, do we want to have a date night, or do we want to go do this or go do that? For the most part, we're pretty similar, and we're just like, yeah, you know, like we can watch some TV or we can watch the show, and that's kind of how we'll spend some time, especially during prep. Or honestly, we do listen to podcasts a lot. So we'll be in the kitchen, and we're really big on like self-improvement podcast. So we really love listening to those, and that gives us something to kind of talk about too. Because in our mindset, like we just want to be better, and we just want to be successful, and we want to work really hard so that we don't have to work so hard when we're older. So we're doing everything that we can to make sure we, you know, get to that point. And I think that kind of pushes us. Like ever since we've met, we've just always been like, how can we be better? How can we grow together? Like, what is there something I can do differently, or can I approach this situation differently with things? So we literally will just listen to podcasts. We'll go on walks together, especially if we have to get our steps or cardio in. You know, going to the gym together. That's a big thing for us too. So we do drive 40 minutes to the gym that we go to because it's worth it. But it does take a lot of time. So we just make sure we prioritize going together, especially if, you know, work schedules are kind of, you know, off. And I don't know, it just, we're pretty open and flexible to just doing things for the other person. Even if we don't really want to, or we're not feeling up to it, but doing those little things, maybe cooking together, or, you know, like I said, podcasts, taking walks, going to the gym together, doing our posing together too. That's another thing that we kind of enjoy doing. Like you take my pictures and then I'll take your picture.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You guys
So
have found joy in the process of your lifestyles.
yeah. And again, like I know it's not, you know, everybody's situation, but I'm grateful that it has become ours, just because I know that if we were with somebody, if we were each with somebody that didn't or weren't really in it, I think we wouldn't be where we're at.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps. And again, his support is just, it's been there since my pretty much mindset wasn't there at the beginning of this year. You know, I was like, I'm not sure if I want to, but his was like, no, I think you should do it because you're really good. So just having that person really believe in you too, especially when it's a spouse or a significant other, it can definitely give you more of motivation to want to work hard, because you don't only believe in yourself, but you also have somebody else that truly believes in you and sees kind of who you are for you and what you're capable of. And that sometimes means more than anything else. So
Yeah, absolutely. Like if someone knows you fully, they've seen you at your worst, your best, and they still believe in you, and they still encourage you, and they want to see you continue to do better, that is a different type of reassuring. Just like the opposite would be true if they're tearing you down or if they're saying hurtful things. It's like we can't judge ourselves for being hurt by somebody that we care about or who cares about us, just like we can't judge ourselves for being inspired by someone's belief in us. I think right now a lot of culture is like so anti validation from your partner. And it's like, but that's a partnership, is to help each other, to be better, to grow. And like you guys are exemplifying that in that ever since you've been together. It's like, what are we doing to get better? So it's not like one of you is going like this. It's like, oh, a little bit ahead. Okay, pull you up. Okay, now you're here. And that's a really beautiful thing to have.
Yep. And I give him props too, because it's hard when this whole competition season, we were traveling a lot more, and it was for me and my shows. And there were a couple of weekends where he had to kind of put his meals off, because we had so much going on. And I know it was hard for him because he's like, I still have goals too, like I still need to get my meals and I still have to work out and all this stuff. And I felt bad because I'm like, I'm really sorry. Like, I know it's a lot with show day weekend and all this stuff, but the fact that he was willing to just kind of put his things off to the side just for the weekend so that we can kind of focus on what I can do at the show, that means a lot too. So learning how to be like, okay, let me be here for her. Let me drive the ambulance at this point for her right now. And then we'll get back to me, and maybe she'll understand that next week or whatever it is will be my time, but I can be here for her and show up for her at this moment because I know this is very important. And just understanding that it's not like this forever, but at certain points we do need one person to step up a little bit more, and it just kind of, goes from there.
It's interesting you use the term ambulance, because something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is we tend to wait until there's like something bad, someone dies, and we're at their funeral talking about how great they are, or then we're showing up for their family, or someone gets hurt or injured or something happens, you never know. Then we're willing to pull the extra stock, we're willing to set our stuff aside. So I like what you said there, because it's exemplifying that even if that's not the case, it's not an emergency.
Yeah.
But if we treated our goals and we treated our dreams and the dreams of our partners more like with that urgency, this is important to them, it's worth it for me to set this aside. It's that giving cycle. It always comes back. You could say that's not the motivation for doing it, but when you are pouring into someone, they have more to then pour into you, and it's a beautiful, it's symbiotic, really.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like the more that you get to know your person, I feel like the more you are able to handle whatever situation is thrown at you. You kind of understand, what works for them and what doesn't, or how to communicate more effectively with this person, and maybe things that I shouldn't say because it might trigger a certain feeling. So I feel like the more that you honestly share and communicate too, it allows them to fully understand you and where you're at that moment, or what you need at that moment. And I feel like that's very powerful, and it's helped us a lot. I mean, we got married very young, but like it's hard because you don't know everything, right? Like you're just kind of learning, and like, so just trial and error, and just, being open about things, and just sharing, this is what I need, or maybe I can be better at doing certain things or saying certain things or whatever it is. And just being understanding, I think it allows you to become a better version of yourself, like within your marriage and just as an individual, and not even just with bodybuilding. Right. So I'm very grateful to have somebody like him, be able to like do this with me, because honestly, I don't know, with the type of support, I don't know if I'd be able to do this by myself. I think about it and I'm just like, he's helped me so much during this whole entire season, and just being there. And just sometimes it makes you feel stronger when you have somebody with you that supports you so much. So it's been amazing just having somebody just believe in you too.
You're only saying this because you're listening to this on the next date day, right? Like you want
to exactly right.
That is honestly just so beautiful, and it's something I think all of us really want, or a lot of people really want. Especially, this is a very individual game, and day in and day out. But if you have a partner that you get to share it with, it does elevate, I think, your game. And I like how you said it's not about necessarily being perfect right away, but learning how to communicate, how to be better with them. And something you also said earlier was after those, or maybe it wasn't after this Rouge, but at the beginning of this season, he was really encouraging you to get out there. You had a little bit in the back of your mind telling you maybe not yet. So how did you know it was time to go back into a prep? And when you made that decision, did anything change about like your approach to prep compared to your 2019 season?
Yeah. So honestly, because I had shared with him, I'm like, I'm just not ready. And I knew I wasn't ready mentally to be all in again. So when I'm all in for something, I'm 100%. If I'm not, then I'm just not, and I felt like at the beginning of this year, I wasn't fully ready, but I like, it's hard because he was just kind of like, I know it takes time, but guess what? You're really good at it. And I really just don't want to see you just like not do it. And sometimes you need that. You need somebody to kind of be a little real with you, and not be so soft all the time with me. So I'm like, I just need that. I'm used to kind of like people being very honest with me, and I'm okay with that because I appreciate that. But he was like, I really feel like, at this point you've taken some time off, right? So your physique's going to be different. It's just a matter of, do you feel mentally prepared pretty much? And I'm like, not yet. I don't think I do just yet. Give me a little bit of time, but he would continue to bring it up. So I'm like, okay, so let's think about it. So it was I think it was February, and I gave myself some time, and I gave myself some time to think about, okay, if I prepped again, what would that look like? I just like to mentally prepare myself with things before I get into them. So I was like, okay, well, I know I just have to be 100%. I know I'm going to have to create my routine again. I know what that looks like because I've done it before. So it's nothing new. But I thought about everything from the posing, from my workouts to who am I going to work with pretty much, because at that point I wasn't working with anybody. And immediately we already knew, him and I both kind of were in unison about who to work with. And that was Paul. And I was like, okay, if I do reach out to him, I'm going to be 100%. And I reached out to him. I'm pretty sure it was February. And at that point, something just clicked in my head, and I was just like, I'm ready. Like mentally, I'm ready. I know physically my body is ready because I hadn't prepped in 3 years. So I'm good. So it was at that moment that I reached out to Paul, and I pretty much told him I'm looking to, start prepping this year, and I'm really interested in working with you. And do you think this would be, we could do this? And immediately, like, he responded back and was like, yeah, like, let's hop on a call, whatever. And from that point, I was like, okay, we're doing this. And I haven't looked back since.
So cool. My mind is swirling with different questions. So
Yeah.
I'll start with this. So what it sounds like is if we were thinking about like that stage of change model, you were like pre-contemplating it. Oh, maybe I'll do it. And then, okay, he keeps bringing it up. I'm thinking about it more. And then suddenly it's like, I'm just not there mentally yet. So it's like, what needs to happen to take action? And for you, it sounds like you needed to talk to a coach. You needed to take that preparatory step of, I know I'm going to be able to take this action. Do you feel like there was a pivotal moment for you where I'm ready to go? Was it like you got a plan from Paul? Was it that you had that phone call and then suddenly you're like, he believes in me, let's go too? Or was it, what was it that like actually had to happen to turn that all in switch on?
It was literally just the conversation that I had with my husband. We spent a lot of time in our kitchen and just kind of talking. So it was the conversation that we were having one night, and he was just like, I could literally see you being on the Olympia stage. Like, I could see you doing this. Like, your muscle is so much different than it was before. And hearing that, and somebody kind of validating maybe what you thought in your head, but you weren't really sure because you never really spoke about it. And just hearing somebody else notice that, and somebody that obviously means a lot and would be real with you if you, weren't at that moment. And I think hearing that and being like, you know what, I know I can do this because I've accomplished this before. Well, not this, but I've accomplished something really great before. And you know what, I think I just needed to hear that. Maybe I just needed that little bit of validation really quick from somebody I really care about and I trust. And I think that's what kind of pushed me to be like, you know what, I'm going to do it. Like, why am I sitting here saying I'm not mentally ready when maybe I was just scared to start back? Maybe it was just a little bit of fear that was actually like in my mental that I just needed to get rid of. Because, sometimes we say we're not ready, but maybe it's just a little bit of self-doubt. Maybe we're just nervous to take that initiative to go ahead and just structure everything in our lives again, So I think just hearing that and just being like, you know what, let me turn off all these like thoughts of self-doubt. And let me just do it, right? Like, I'm not going to give myself time to think. I think I'm ready to just crush this and see what we have. So
If you think, you stink. That's what That's what I say.
You're exactly right. It's so true. You have to turn that off sometimes. Like, it may not even be negative feelings, but it's not positive, focused, determined feelings sometimes. And I think that we have to remember to constantly, or to feed our brain with these feelings and emotions, because that's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us motivated. That's what keeps us going for long term. Your mind is very powerful. Obviously, like, so it's, we need to use it to the best that we can, and fill it with positive things, because if not, it can mentally destroy you as well. So I think it's super important to keep in mind.
Something I really like about just the way you talk and the way you express this is you're not saying that a growth mentality is about pushing aside all the things that don't feel 110%. I think a lot of people latch onto that because it's so extreme, it's predictable. It's predictable that if you're feeling this high energy, you're going to go and do the thing. But what's better to strive for is that, like, contentedness. It's not complacency, it's contentedness. I'm just rocking, whether I'm up here or I'm down here, I'm still doing what needs to be done. And I like how you said you don't necessarily need to rely on that gung-ho feeling, because it's not always going to be there. But if you feed your mind with the positivity and you trust the people around you and you take those steps, that's what elicits the growth in the long run. And I admire and appreciate that, because I do think what holds a lot of people back is they do latch on to the extreme mentality. I used to do this, latch on to the extreme mentality, because if it's not extreme, then we could go the complete other way. And now there's a reason for that. So you expressing that, hey, it's not always going to feel amazing, is a big deal. And then you said a word, you said fear, you said part of you maybe was scared, or part of you had a little bit of fear of it. What was the fear? Was it, at least what I would maybe want to assume, and I could be totally wrong, but like 3 years off, we're told you're going to be forgotten. No one's going to remember, or you're not going to look. So we kind of feel like, oh, are we going to lose that? So was that the fear, or was there something else?
I knew, in a way, I did feel like, I've heard people say, oh yeah, like one and done. Right. So it's like, yeah, you did all that, and then now you're kind of just MIA. And it's like, no, I wanted to stop for a little bit. And after I won nationals, my Instagram got deleted. And
I was stalking you. I'm like, okay, there's no way she wasn't posting before nationals.
And I was so upset, and I'm like, well, why? I'm like, because that showed all of my journey leading up, and it was just like a big part of like my history. And like, I feel like in a way it can be forgotten about to people that may know me now, because they never got to see that. And they think that, oh, I just came out of nowhere this year. And it's like, no, I actually do have like a little bit of history with it too, So that was hard, to be able to just be like, oh, like, and of course it's just an Instagram. It's just social media. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. And I'm not here to impress other people for it, but it plays a big part in what I feel like it in a way is lost, because I'm like, oh, it's not here for people to actually see. I started off just like everybody else, like I started off in NPC, like just learning my posing wasn't great. Like it's been a journey. It hasn't just always been, up this whole entire time. So yeah, I think feeling that maybe, you could be forgotten about, but I also do feel that, what if I didn't compare to the girls now? Like, what if maybe my legs are a little bit too big? Because at that time I had some more body fat when I started off, on my legs. So I'm like, oh, am I going to actually look the part? I don't want to embarrass myself. That was my big thing. Like, I'd taken so much time off that I'm like, am I going to actually be ready, by the time we have a show in mind? Or am I going to be too small as far as muscle? But I'm like, you know what? It's okay. That's a risk that I'm willing to take. I know that there's plenty of girls who have competed on the pro stage that maybe felt like they weren't ready, or maybe there were some more things that they could work on. So I'm like, you know what? If I don't look the way I want to, it's okay. I'm still going to be alive. I'm still going to be breathing, and I'm still going to have some work to do. And that's just what we're going to do. And as we prepared for the first show, I think our prep was like 8 or 9 weeks. It was relatively short. So I got second call outs and I'm like, I was okay with it because I was like, I know what I needed to work on after hearing the feedback. And I was like, honestly, I was grateful that I was like, okay, second call outs, first show back after 3 years. There's hope. Like, that's all I needed to hear, you know? So to me, I felt like that was a win for me at that moment.
It was. And not only that, like just getting on stage is always a win. And then you
Yeah.
came back after 3 years, you ignored the thoughts that could have kept you from ever doing it. And this takes me back to what your husband told you, which is like, you're so good. I don't want to see you not do it. And he was right. You made it to the Olympia stage. He was right. You are amazing. He saw that vision, and there was obviously, you had to believe that in order to actually do it, which you did. And you just said that you guys got the feedback, so you were happy, you felt good, you knew what needed to be done. You guys executed the feedback flawlessly, really, it appeared anyways, throughout this season. And you said in the beginning, from your very first show this season to the Olympia and even to your most recent qualification, you just kept improving in a way that was like, wow, you didn't look like a different athlete, but you looked like a different version of yourself that was more refined maybe. And it was just really cool to see. So what was the feedback you were getting after all the shows, and what were you guys doing to actually bring what they wanted to see?
So for the most part, I will say consistently, my feedback has just been just a little bit more conditioned and a little bit more conditioned with my tie-ins, and working on my front pose, making sure my core is tighter. And so that's pretty much been the consistent feedback from each show. It might've just been a little bit more in one area compared to another, but what we did was I was like, okay, that's all I need to hear. I'm like, it's not anything like, oh, growing more here or growing more there. I'm like, easy, we can do this. Like, if I have to suffer a little bit, I'm okay with that. Like, trust me, I'm okay. So honestly, we did have some days where we would have to grind it out, like double cardio, 2-hour cardio days. But I was willing to do it because I'm like, I want to show that we can implement feedback. I want to show that like it's possible, like even if it's hard, even if it sucks, like I'm tired, low energy. Yeah, it's going to happen. I know. Like, I just want to show that we can take this feedback and we're listening and we can show up better, because I know we can, like this is what this is all about. Right. So they want to see us do well. They want to see us come back better. Like, who wants to see terrible competition? Nobody does. The judges don't want it. That makes it boring. So I'm like, yeah, let's do what we can. And let's take care of our body, because, we're pushing our bodies to the limits. Right. So making sure I'm staying on top of all my vitamins and everything. And even if I am on lower calories, like it's going to be okay. And I think telling your mind that will in turn allow your body to, I believe in that, but allows your body to kind of make those changes. Again, because if you're stressed out mentally, it's going to show in your physique. So I think we handled it very well. I will say Paul's very good at being like, he understands, I feel like with girls and women, what we need to. I've been with somebody before it was pretty much just like crash dieting the whole entire time, like no carbs, and it worked obviously, but at the same time, like mentally I was just struggling, So Paul is very good at being like, okay, we're going to grind for these days, but then we'll do a refeed or we'll do this and that, because it is important for your hormones. It's important for your mindset. It's important for your physique, and just to stay healthy, that we still take care of you in the process. So he's been very good at that. And that's kind of why I was able to keep going so much this year. I didn't know I was going to keep going until just recently, so I'm grateful for that. And the fact that Paul he's a great person and a great coach to just have. And he truly cares about you. He's like, at any point, if you don't feel like you want to keep going, let me know, because your health and you are more important. And there's always gonna be shows. We'll wait till next year, but I'm like, no, I'm like, let's go. Let's keep going. I feel great. I'm like, yeah, I'll just have a little bit of carbs and then we can keep going. Okay.
Give me a refeed before we move forward.
Yes, exactly. So I think just having somebody also with Paul believing in you and just helping you in every step of the way, and knowing and understanding that it is going to be hard a few times, but we can do it. We can make it happen. And as we saw with the judges, when they said, okay, you did implement the feedback, I'm like, that's all I needed to hear. And that gives me the will to keep going even more. I'm like, I can be a little bit more conditioned. I can work on my tie-ins. I can do this and that. So yeah, I love hearing the feedback and just getting better.
Yeah, that's so awesome. You don't want to show up and, like you said, be worse, or show up and bring something totally, okay, they didn't tell me to bring more delts. Why did I try to condition that and get even more cap? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But you did what you needed to do. And actually, one of our listeners wanted to know what you do for your glutes, because your glutes have come so far. So she had asked if you could share your glute training with us.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't do a lot of heavy weights with my glutes. What I do is I do the abductors a lot. When I wanted to be able to grow my glutes, because when I won nationals, my glutes were kind of like, they were smaller. And I knew the pro girls, their glutes were bigger than mine. They had more muscle density. And so I did a lot of hip thrusts. I did a lot of abductors that focuses more on like your outer glutes too. And honestly, I will say it's not an indication of what exercises you're doing, but how are you executing them? So in my opinion, I wasn't doing a ton of heavy weights. What I was doing is I was literally contracting that muscle, doing holds, making sure that I'm feeling a burn. I'm literally doing the banded side squats. I'm activating those muscles beforehand. And I feel like truly just exhausting it sometimes. I feel like that will help. And don't be afraid to eat a little bit, especially after your glute exercises, because obviously that's going to give you some growth and it's going to allow your body to want to produce more muscle in those areas. But honestly, I don't do anything fancy as far as glutes. It's just your staple, just normal glute exercises. And I will say I was doing hip thrusts for a while. So that definitely, I feel like, helped a lot. And lunges, abductors. And I'm recently starting to do more reverse, like hack squat, just to kind of help with my tie-ins a bit more. So that's another good one. But really, it's just learning how to activate your muscle, your mind to muscle connection with your glutes. In my opinion, that's worked for me. So.
Yeah, I think that there's proof that regardless of the weight that you're using, any group that is more likely to actually engage the muscle, even if they're not under a lot of like weight, is going to have better gains. And execution is really key, because you can push something away from your body, but you can bias what muscle is doing the pushing. Well, I didn't say, are you pushing with your legs? I didn't say, you know what I mean? So
yep.
It does matter how you execute it. And that's something I had to learn, and I'm still working on it, because some workouts you go in the gym, you're like, oh my gosh, nothing is like clicking, you know? No. You gotta like start from you're like, okay, let's remove the weight and build up until I start to feel it. And sometimes that's hard to do mentally.
Well, and sometimes I think a lot of us, we start off like, okay, if I need to grow, I need to put on all this weight on the exercise that I'm doing. And then your form is compromised. And it's like, no, like, yes, I understand you're trying to build, but at the same time, your form is going to be everything. So if you're doing lighter weight, but your form is perfect and you are truly activating that muscle, that's where that's going to happen. That's where your growth is going to happen. And I think sometimes we just get so caught up in just adding so much weight because it's a building phase. And it's not always like that. I mean, for some it is, and their form's great, but I know for me personally, sometimes if I get too high in my weights, my form is compromised and I'll feel it more in my lower back. And I'm like, that's what we don't want. So less is more sometimes.
I love that feedback. That's such good insight too, because you're not saying it's anything fancy. It's just great execution. And you were able to see a lot of improvements. Now, I have been dying to know what those 3 years off look like. Like, all I keep thinking is what was happening. Like, it sounds like you were still living the lifestyle. It sounds like it was still on your mind, but did you expect or plan to come back to the stage, or were you kind of tabling it?
Honestly, I wasn't expecting to. I feel like in that moment when I stopped in 2020, I was kind of just like, no, maybe I'm just, maybe at some point later on down the road, I might. But to me in my head, I just wasn't planning on it. I was like, I kind of just want to, live my life, do whatever, but I'm still gonna, like you said, live the lifestyle, still eat clean for the most part, still work out because I can't not work out. Right. So I kind of just wanted to just do what I wanted to do and not feel, like so structured because I was for a little while. And honestly, my husband still kept going and he was in his off season. So obviously being around him, we still made our meals. I wasn't always eating like at home meals all the time. And if anything, I was actually eating lower calories when I started prep compared to kind of like where I'm at now. So if anything, I wasn't eating as much. And I still worked out. I did a lot of working out with my husband, but in the back of my head, it's funny because as I was taking those 3 years off and, he was working legs a little bit more than I was. And so I was working out with him a few times, but then in the back of my head, I'm like, but wait, I probably shouldn't work out my legs so much. Cause like, what if they end up getting bigger? And what if I do step back on stage? And like, what if they're just too big at that point? So those things did cross my head. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I do see myself possibly competing again at some point. So I still kind of worked out in a way that if I were to come back on stage, that I wouldn't be too much, or I wouldn't have so much muscle at that point that it's just hard. So yeah, I just I don't know, I just kind of worked out and still ate, but just not in overconsumption. And I don't know, I just kind of enjoyed life a little bit.
That's so awesome. Like
Yeah.
you are an example that you can take the time off, you can come back feeling good. You don't even have to know if you're going to step back on stage.
Mm-hmm.
People feel like they got to know. I'm either hanging up the heels or I'm going to compete again. You don't always have to know.
Nope.
And sometimes I think releasing a timeline actually is the best thing you can do for yourself. And it revealed to you, like, I'm going to live this lifestyle. It's already ingrained in me. But then what was interesting is that thought of, I probably shouldn't train legs as much. I think that if you were really, really done, you would have been able to recognize that was a conditioned thought as a competitor and say, screw it, I want to train legs. But it's like there was that part of you that knew you weren't done. And I think because you listened to that and you grew, and then you let yourself relax and live. Was that part of why you decided to go with Paul? Because it wasn't that bro diet, crash diet type of mentality?
Yeah, honestly, like it's funny because that's literally what I've told a lot of people is when I saw his competitors and his athletes, the girls, they didn't look run down. They looked, healthy. They looked, just great on stage. And to me, I'm like, that says a lot, right? And it's not just one or two competitors. It was like all of them, they looked great. And even if they didn't get the placing that they wanted, guess what? They still looked amazing, and their progress from show to show it was there. And so for me, I'm like, I want to work with somebody that I, number one, know, and I know that they know how to work with females that, that plays a big part too. They understand and they look healthy. So I was like, I think he's the person for me personally, because I don't know, it just in my head, especially with Paul and when we've talked and stuff, his thing is he wants to make prep sustainable. And I appreciated that because as I've prepped this year, I've noticed I'm like, I have felt more sustained than I did before. And that means a lot. Yes, there are hard days for sure. But for the most part, overall, I will say I felt relatively great this whole entire time. So I'm so glad that I went with him because it plays a big part, especially with athletes. And if you want to go long-term.
So true. If you can't see this being a fulfilling endeavor for a long period of time, like if in your mind you're like, all I have to do is this for 12 weeks, that's already the badman. Like that's wrong. Yeah. I have to do this for 2 days. That's a little different. I got to push the cardio for 3 weeks, whatever, 4 weeks. It doesn't matter. That's like a short sacrifice for long-term result. But when it's I can't wait for this to be over. Yes. After prep, I'm going to start doing this. That's when it's like a red flag.
Yeah. Well, and I like, this is hard for me too, but like it's hard. So when I won nationals in 2019, like that was my second show ever. And it was, that was an indescribable feeling as well. Right. it's hard for me to even say this because I don't want it to get misconstrued, but I felt so like dead in a way. I felt like I couldn't even enjoy what I had just done because all I could think about was like, oh my gosh, I like feel like I'm dead. All I can think about is just like, I just want to eat something. Like, I'm just so tired. Like, and yes, I know this happens, but I think back and I'm like, I don't know. It's hard to even say that because it's like, that was such a great thing that I did. And I hate that, but I just didn't feel 100% present, like I don't know. But this year I'm like, it's been a totally different feeling. Like I have felt present. I have felt like in it, like, I don't know. It's hard, but it happens. Like
Yes.
the part of it sometimes when you aren't sustaining your body and you're not taking care of yourself, or you're just thinking about when is this going to be over or whatever it is, like you're not enjoying the moment and stuff. But no, that's just the biggest difference for me. I'm like having somebody that actually cares and is willing to make these changes and take care of you in the process. That plays a big part.
I'm actually really glad that you said that. I know it's hard to admit it, especially because I can tell you have a really grateful heart and a compassionate heart. Like you want people to know, like, I'm not saying I'm not aware that this is a huge deal.
Yeah.
But you're expressing that being mindful of your approach is going to impact how the actual moment feels.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got there, it's like, that's awesome, but I almost don't care because I'm so done with this. Like you felt your body was done, your mind was just over it. And it's like, okay, let's take a better approach next time so I can enjoy the fruits of my labor, right? And I think it's a great, like I said, I think it's a great thing you said, because many of us enter the sport with that mentality of I have to do this, and it's gotta suck, right? I gotta make sure it's horrible and torturous, and prep's supposed to be hard, and there's hard moments, right? Like you said, but it's not supposed to be so challenging that you don't want to continue.
Yeah. Right. And that's when I think maybe that's why I took off so much time too, because in my head, I was like, okay, well, if this is how prep's going to be every time, this is hard, but I just don't think I was with the right person at that time, which is fine. We have to experience that, we have to, again, we were new to this, so we didn't know, so I think just going through something that challenging, it has allowed me to be like, okay, well, this is what I really need in somebody moving forward if I were to do this again. And I'm glad I took that step. And I'm glad I experienced what I did, because then I wouldn't know these things. So.
Yeah. And now you know how it feels to be taking such a sustainable and fulfilling approach that you can have maybe a little bit. And I'm not saying people need to go to the depths of darkness to experience the light, but I do think that there's something to be said about when you've gone through the intensive bro diet, the crash diet, all of those things, and then you come out the other side, you're following macros, or you're having a more sustainable approach, your body's being taken care of in the process. You're like, oh, I really like this more than like I liked it when I was suffering, but I like it even more now. And that's gratifying.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm like, now I understand why Ashley Kay competes so much. I'm like, she just enjoys it. I'm like, I'll keep going too. This is great.
Exactly. That's so awesome. This is like, I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because if obviously mental health is very important to me. It's my thing. Build more than just a body. But if I were to say anything else to a competitor, it would be to make sure you're following a process that actually inspires you to feel good, that incites some sort of joy, because you're going to fast forward 30 years, 40 years, 50, whatever. You want to look back and feel so good that you invested that much time and energy and you enjoyed it. It's not something that you suffered through necessarily. You grew, you challenged yourself, yes, but you want to feel good, not good in the sense of babying yourself, good in the sense of you took care of yourself. And I think I wish more competitors knew they didn't have to go to some of those extremes. And that's why I'm so grateful for this conversation, because I feel like you're really representing Like you don't have to do that anymore. You can be successful with it, but then it might lead you to want to take
right.
a step back completely.
Yeah. Right. And sometimes you just get there, you know, even if you are going with a sustainable approach, like sometimes you're burnt out, you're tapped out, and like, it's okay. You know, like it's totally okay to experience that, because guess what? Not everybody can go through this for long periods of time, and you're not obligated to, you know, like I know people love to say like the stage will always be there, but the stage will always be there, you know, like even if you just are kind of like in the back of your head, I don't think I want to, like, I may never do this again. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to take these thoughts and just like do what you want to do sometimes. Like sometimes we need that mental reset. We need that we need to get recharged, whatever it is, you know, that's going on in life. Life gets hard sometimes. But it's okay to take a year off. It's okay to take 2 years off. It's okay to just, even if you honestly, your physique is perfect at that point, but you just need to mentally reset. That's okay. You know, like take a year off just to mentally reset. Take 3 years off if you need to, but, but yeah, it's important to tell yourself that it's okay, you know?
Totally. I love that so much. You're not defined by if you continue or don't continue. There's so much more to this. And
yeah.
I want to ask another question from a listener. So they asked, what is your biggest strength and what is your biggest weakness? And how do you navigate each of those?
I will say my biggest strength is my mind. I feel like based off of things that I've gone through or just kind of have learned throughout the years, not just with competing, but just in general life sometimes. I feel like that's my biggest thing that I know will always push me forward, no matter what I go through. And I will always find a positive out of whatever bad situation. Like there's a reason why I'm trying to go through this, or there's a reason why I was meant to be put in this, or whatever it is. I feel like that's my biggest strength. And I hope that continues to carry me through with everything else, with bodybuilding and just life. Like, I think it's important to have that. And my biggest weakness, I will say, is sometimes being a perfectionist in things. I think sometimes it can do more harm than good at times. So when you're striving so hard to just be better or be good at certain things, sometimes it can be overwhelming. And I think sometimes it's important to take a step back and be like, I just need to slow down. I just need to recognize that I've done A, B, and C, and I'm doing well or whatever it is. And I need to stop being so hard on myself, maybe. I think sometimes, especially as competitors, you get really hard on yourself. You know, you start critiquing yourself more than you probably should. And here's the thing, I'm like, you're doing something that's really hard and really challenging. Like you're already doing something that's hard on yourself. The last thing that you need is to tear yourself down even more. Right. So I think just being a perfectionist about things and being overwhelmed at times, that can be kind of stressful, but again, learning how to navigate through that, I think, can become a strength. So those are, I feel like that's my biggest weakness. I need to work on that too. So something I can work on. I'm trying. I feel like I've gotten better this year with it, but it's still something that I can be much better on.
Yeah, for sure. I think all of our like biggest weaknesses tend to contribute to our strengths. Like being a perfectionist is very like it self-serves. So it's hard to work on weaknesses that in some way benefit us because we have that like tight grip on it. Like, but if I stop being a perfectionist, then all these things could happen. But we also see the flip side of it, which is if I keep being a perfectionist, this could happen. So
and it can stress you out like a lot. Which in turn, there goes your physique. So it's like, okay, let's pick and choose here.
Exactly. That's why it's like, it's so hard sometimes to work on people, we're critical of ourselves because we're like, I shouldn't have this weakness.
Yeah.
But there's a reason it's there. It's like it is serving in some way. So it's difficult to change it, but it sounds like your mindset, that being your biggest strength and continuing to support you and carry you through so much, is just going to help you through that.
Yeah, definitely.
I really liked that question, actually. That was
That was a good one. I haven't gotten asked that before.
yeah, I was like, I wonder how that will be expressed. So I appreciate you having such a beautiful answer too. So I like that what you said. You too. Yeah. So um this is a question that maybe we'll open up a few different cans of worms. So we'll see where it takes us. But I wanted to know, who is Ariana outside of competing? Like, who are you outside of this?
I will say, so, okay. So as far as like maybe what I do
Yeah,
or,
what do you do? What do you like? What brings you joy in your life? How do you spend time when it's not it? And you don't have, maybe you don't, which is fine. But do you have other things that you really enjoy?
so I will say, so outside of competing, I will say that, well, first off, I went to school for nutrition. So I love food. I worked as a nutritionist for about three years. And then I left in 2020. So since then, I've been grateful to be kind of more of like a stay-at-home wife, but I still do like some part-time jobs here and there. So I've been grateful to kind of experience that and be able to focus more on bodybuilding, helping my husband with, meals and things like that, because it is a lot. Like we all know, this takes a lot of time. So we've been able to do that. And other than that, I will say, I don't know. What do I do? Like, so other than working out, eating meals, we like to travel. Um, I don't know. I love like shopping. I love like typical
Yes.
things, but I like to spend time with my mom. I do some part-time work for my mom as well. She's another big, motivator and supporter in my life too. So I don't know. I'm like, this is literally just my life.
That's a lot. That's awesome. And this is a thing too. Like, you're an athlete through and through. You love this sport. You love this lifestyle. You enjoy
Yeah.
this. And
Yeah.
then being a stay-at-home wife is so awesome too. Being able to care and provide in that way is amazing. And then being able to do random part-time jobs when you want to, or if they appeal to you, is so refreshing.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And it's amazing that you got your BS in nutrition too. Now, I started my college career studying dietetics, and I realized I didn't want to anymore. Once I started, I was like, I care more about why people are eating versus what they're eating. It was just not my passion. I was like, I don't care much about food. So I'm curious what your time working as a nutritionist was like, because I imagine, or at least it's part of what kind of turned me away, was I didn't want to go work in a hospital necessarily. I didn't want to go. And I know that a lot of people have to go down that track. So I'm curious what that was like for you, and if getting your education and coaching and all that looked different than what you expected when you started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So originally I started off, I wanted to be a registered dietitian when I was in school. I was like, yeah, that's my plan. I want to do that. Well, come to find out, they were going to start making, I think all registered dietitians have your master's degree. I think it was by 2023. And I graduated in 2017. So I was like, at this point, like if I'm going to be a registered dietitian, I might as well just go ahead and get my master's degree, because I know I'm going to have to at some point. I'm not going to bank on whatever company I'm with having to pay for my education, because they might not. So I was like, maybe I don't want to be a registered dietitian. There's still plenty of avenues that I can go with my degree in nutrition. So when I graduated, I actually started working at the health department that's in our area where we live in North Carolina. And I worked as a nutritionist for WIC, Women, Infants, and Children. And I enjoyed it. It was very eye-opening, because I was kind of just fresh out of college. I wasn't really exposed to a lot of community setting other than my internship, but I was able to help, pregnant women, especially in a low income setting. How do you make these healthy choices with the means that you have, right? And what we're going to be helping you with, because it's hard, right? You're growing a human in your body. And I'm sure the last thing on your mind is, oh, I need to get fruits and vegetables, right? Like whatever money that you have at this point and whatever food that you're given, food is food, calories are calories. I'm hungry, I'm just going to eat, right? So it was honestly very eye-opening to be able to help women navigate and be able to make smarter decisions with what they have, if they were willing to. Not everybody was, obviously, but it was very rewarding to see that, and to be able to just make those small changes and small goals with some women. And again, you do see some very sad things sometimes too with it, drug issues and things like that. So it's like, how do you navigate this? Like, but I did learn a lot. I learned a lot as far as, honestly, it plays a big part with bodybuilding too, but if you are on a budget, you can still make healthy choices. It was very cool when I was in college. I'm not sure if you've heard of this, but we actually had to live off of the amount of what food stamps was for a week. So I forget the amount that it was per person, but we had to buy whatever food that we had with that money and eat off of that for a whole entire week. So we had like rice and beans and stuff like that. And it's amazing because it's like, you can still make things happen on a budget. So I think like going through those things, it has actually helped now with bodybuilding and being like, okay, you don't have to just like go crazy at the grocery store to get everything that you need, right? Like we can still make good decisions and cook at home, and still, be on a budget and not have to overspend so much. But I enjoyed working as a nutritionist at that time. It was very rewarding, very eye-opening. And again, like I love food, so I can talk about food as much as anybody can or would want to. But that was a very, very eye-opening experience. And I'm so grateful to honestly have worked there and learned and saw what I had seen there. So,
well, I'm sensing we're going to need to do a follow-up episode. And I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast yet, but I just started a podcast studio in my house. And yeah, I bought a bunch of cameras, everything. So I'm in South Carolina.
Oh, so that's awesome.
Greenville area. So
no way.
Yeah,
I don't think it's very far from us.
Are you closer to South Carolina?
We're in Winston-Salem. So it's near like Greensboro. I think it's like a maybe 4-hour drive. It's not bad.
No, we need to get you down here then. So we could do like a follow-up episode. We could talk about food. We could talk about whatever you want, do a little like touch base as well. So I'm going to add you to my list of in-person guests to reach out to. Okay. And we'll do a follow-up episode too, because I want to hear more and pick your brain more on that as well, as just explore whatever's going on at the time. But before I ask you the last 2 questions I ask everybody, I want to know what you hope to achieve in competing.
I want to show people that with bodybuilding, not only can we learn so much and just continue to be better, but I want people to understand that there's going to be hard times, and a big part of this sport is just taking everything in, taking in all the moments and just being the best version of yourself. And I hope to inspire others that it's okay to do what I've done. It's okay to take 3 years off. It's okay to not always win and just maybe come in better and just focus on your progress more so than just a medal sometimes, right? Like I want to show that you can start off not knowing anything and then learning something and being very good at it. I just want to show that there's still hope, because again, we don't all start off being great at this. We all started off as amateurs. So I just want to just show and just inspire others that like I was where you are and you can get to this point too. And just believe in yourself and just keep going and just don't lose and don't quit. Like don't lose that insight that you have for yourself and just that motivation, because again, you can accomplish anything that you truly, truly want. So that's what I hope to just show others as I continue.
That's a beautiful mission and a very intrinsically motivated one. And that might lend insight into your answers to the next question, but I'll ask. And even if you repeat it, it was so great. That's totally fine if you do. What would be your best advice to someone who has never competed before but would like to? And then your best advice for someone on their road to pro?
Somebody who's never competed, I will say, just don't overthink it. Just do it. Hire a coach and give it to them to just kind of take the control. Let them tell you what to do and just execute. Even if it's not perfect at first, just execute it, do what you can, be honest with yourself and with them, and just continue to work on yourself, because the more that you are working on yourself with bodybuilding, it will leach into other aspects of your life. And I guarantee you, you will become better at a lot of other things in your life. So just, again, just taking it and just doing it, and just executing, I would say, to a first-time competitor. And for somebody that is competing to get their pro card, I would say, don't give up. Don't give up, because sometimes your journey is longer. Sometimes your journey is shorter. But at the same time, the second that you give up, you will never know what it is like when that time comes. And more than likely, if you continue and you execute and you literally take that feedback and keep rolling with it, your time will come. It's just a matter of when. We don't know, right? So just don't give up. It can be hard. It can be challenging, but just persevere, right? Like, just get it done. And I promise you that feeling will be more fulfilling than anything else, because you know how hard you've worked for something. And that means more than anything. So that's really my biggest thing, is just believe in yourself and just continue to show up for yourself, nobody else, for yourself. And just don't give up on it.
Love that. That's so awesome. And I just appreciate everything you've shared and all that we've discussed today. So how can people connect with you and follow your journey moving forward?
You can follow me on Instagram. It's Ari_IFBB Pro. And I will continue to kind of post my journey, leading into next year, and a little bit of off-season time before we start back. But yeah, follow me there and I will share as much as I can along.
Beautiful. Well, we'll put that in the show notes page. You guys, as always, on celestial.fit/podcast. If you are listening right away, it'll be at the top of that page. If you're listening in the future, just scroll down to the category section and you'll find it there. Not only will you see the links to connect, but you're also going to see a bulleted list of the topics we covered, full episode timestamps, so you can go back and listen to your favorite parts, as well as a summary of the episode, so you can share it with your friends, family, let them know they should listen, or maybe your teammates, and say, this is my favorite part, you got to check it out. It always goes a long way for myself, but mainly for the athletes. When you tag us or message them, let them know what resonated, talk to them about their journey. It means so much. And it gives us a platform. Like, the whole reason for this podcast is to give athletes that voice and share their journey. So it means so much when you reach out or you share that with us. So thank you guys so much for listening. And Ariana, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is awesome.
You're welcome. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you're in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.